Ghosts. The forgotten shoppers. The Mall of Oakridge had stood for decades, a beacon of commerce and community. However, as years passed, it began to show its age. To revitalize the once thriving center, a major renovation was underway. Vince Harper, a seasoned construction worker, had seen his fair share of old buildings and hidden spaces, but nothing could prepare him for what he was about to uncover. While working late one evening, Vince noticed an odd section of the basement. The blueprints showed nothing of significance, just a blank space. Curiosity piqued. He grabbed a flashlight and decided to investigate. He followed a narrow, dusty corridor that seemed to lead nowhere. As he reached the end, his flashlight beam fell upon an old, sealed-off door. Its wood splintered and its hinges rusted. Vince's heart raced as he pried open the door. The air that escaped was stale, carrying the scent of decay and neglect. Beyond the threshold lay an untouched relic of the past. An old department store, forgotten and abandoned. The sight before him was surreal. Dust-covered mannequins, dressed in outdated fashion, stood frozen in eerie poses. Shelves lined with decaying merchandise stretched into the darkness. Vince's footsteps echoed through the empty aisles, disturbing the silence that had reigned for decades. As he ventured deeper, he noticed something unsettling. The mannequins seemed almost lifelike, their eyes following him with a ghostly gaze. Vince shrugged off the feeling, blaming his overactive imagination. He continued exploring, his flashlight revealing glimpses of the past. A child's toy left on the floor, a forgotten purse on a counter. Vince reached the store's center, where a large, dust-covered register stood. As he wiped away the grime, he saw a name tag lying beside it, Betty. Suddenly, a chill ran down his spine. He felt as if he was being watched. Turning slowly, he was met with a sight that froze him in place. Ghostly apparitions of shoppers and employees filled the store, their faces a mix of confusion and sorrow. They moved silently, their forms flickering in and out of existence. Vince's heart pounded in his chest as he backed away, but the apparitions didn't seem to notice him. Vince tried to rationalize what he was seeing. Maybe it was a trick of the light or his mind playing games with him. But the apparitions remained, their spectral forms drifting through the aisles. Vince watched in horror as a mother and her child, both ghostly pale, wandered aimlessly. An old man sat on a bench, his vacant eyes staring into nothingness. His panic grew as he stumbled upon an employee's lounge. The ghostly figures of workers sat around a table, their conversations silent, but their expressions filled with despair. Vince's breath came in ragged gasps as he realized these weren't just any ghosts. They were the forgotten shoppers and employees who had vanished decades ago. Desperate to leave, Vince retraced his steps to the door, but something was wrong. The corridor he had come through was gone, replaced by a solid wall. He pounded on it, shouting for help, but his cries were swallowed by the oppressive silence. The ghosts seemed to sense his distress and turned their gaze towards him, their eyes filled with an unsettling emptiness. Hours felt like days as Vince wandered the forgotten store, trying to find a way out. The ghosts followed him, their presence suffocating. Every turn he took led him back to the store's center, where the register and Betty's name tag mocked him. He was trapped in a nightmarish loop, unable to escape the grip of the past. His mind began to fracture under the relentless pressure. He saw flashes of memories that weren't his own. A young girl playing hide and seek among the racks, an employee closing up the store for the last time, a shopper frantically searching for an exit that no longer existed. These memories mingled with his own, blurring the line between reality and the supernatural. Vince's flashlight flickered and died, plunging him into darkness. The ghosts glowed faintly, their forms the only source of light. He could hear their whispers now, a haunting chorus that filled his ears and gnawed at his sanity. In his delirium, Vince stumbled upon an old newspaper, yellowed with age. The headline read, "Mysterious Disappearances at Oakridge Mall Department Store Sealed Off." The article detailed how, decades ago, shoppers and employees had vanished without a trace. The store was sealed off in a desperate attempt to contain whatever malevolent force was at work. Realization dawned on Vince. He was never meant to find this place. The mall's renovation had inadvertently broken the seal, and now he was part of the cursed history. The ghosts weren't just apparitions. They were souls trapped in a timeless limbo, victims of an ancient curse. Despair consumed him as he understood his fate. He was doomed to become one of the forgotten, lost in the shadows of a bygone era. Vince sank to the floor, his spirit broken. As the ghosts closed in, he felt his body grow cold, his life force slipping away. The next morning, the construction crew found Vince's abandoned tools, but no sign of him. The basement was sealed off once more, this time with a sense of urgency. Rumors spread among the workers about the cursed department store, but no one dared to investigate further. Years passed and the mall thrived once again. But beneath its bustling surface, the forgotten store remained, untouched and undisturbed. The ghosts of the past continued their silent vigil, their numbers now including a new apparition, a construction worker named Vince, forever wandering the halls of the forgotten shoppers. And so, the legend of the Oakridge Mall persisted, a chilling reminder that some places are best left undisturbed, their secrets buried with the passage of time. Stalker. The mannequin's eyes. Chelsea loved spending her weekends at the mall. The bustling corridors and lively atmosphere provided a welcome escape from her monotonous routine. She strolled through various stores, enjoying the casual window shopping and occasional splurge. This Saturday was no different, or so she thought. As she walked past a trendy boutique, she felt a prickle of unease. Turning, she noticed a mannequin in the store window. Its lifelike eyes seemed to be staring directly at her. Chelsea shivered, shaking off the feeling as a figment of her imagination. Mannequins were designed to look realistic, after all. She continued her shopping, but the sense of being watched lingered. Every store she entered, every turn she took, she felt those eyes on her. At first, she brushed it off as paranoia, but the feeling grew stronger, gnawing at her nerves. In a high-end clothing store, Chelsea was browsing a rack of dresses when she saw it again. The same mannequin, with the same unsettling gaze, positioned near the fitting rooms. Her heart skipped a beat. She hurried to the cashier, trying to express her concerns. "Excuse me, but there's something strange about that mannequin," she said, her voice trembling slightly. The cashier glanced at the mannequin and then back at Chelsea, smiling politely. "It's just a mannequin, ma'am. They're designed to look lifelike." Chelsea felt a flush of frustration. "No, it's been following me. I saw it in another store earlier." The cashier's smile faded into a look of concern, not for Chelsea's safety, but for her sanity. "Maybe you need to take a break. Sometimes the mall can be overwhelming." Feeling dismissed and embarrassed, Chelsea left the store. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Determined to prove she wasn't imagining things, she decided to take a picture of the mannequin the next time she saw it. Chelsea walked briskly, her eyes darting from side to side, searching for any sign of the mannequin. She found it again, this time in a small, dimly lit jewelry shop. It stood at the entrance, its eyes boring into her soul. Heart pounding, she fumbled for her phone and snapped a picture. The flash seemed to bring the mannequin to life. Chelsea gasped as she reviewed the photo. In the image, the mannequin's eyes were unmistakably focused on her, filled with an eerie, almost human intensity. She showed the photo to the store clerk, who looked at her with a mixture of confusion and annoyance. "Miss, that's just a mannequin," the clerk said dismissively. "If you're feeling uncomfortable, maybe you should leave." Chelsea's frustration turned to fear. She felt like she was losing her mind. No one believed her, and the mannequin's relentless gaze seemed to follow her everywhere. Determined to get to the bottom of this, Chelsea decided to confront the mannequin directly. She retraced her steps to the jewelry shop, but the mannequin was gone. Panic set in as she frantically searched the surrounding stores. She found it again, in a corner of a deserted electronics shop. Gathering her courage, she approached the mannequin. As she got closer, a chilling realization hit her. The mannequin's eyes were too real. She reached out, hesitating, then touched its face. The cold, unyielding surface felt like plastic, but there was something off about it. Suddenly, the mannequin moved. Chelsea screamed and stumbled back, dropping her phone. The mannequin's head tilted, its eyes locking onto hers with a malevolent gleam. It wasn't a mannequin at all. It was a man, his skin painted and body perfectly still. Chelsea's scream echoed through the empty store, but no one came to her aid. The man, her stalker, lunged at her, his movements quick and predatory. She turned and ran, her heart pounding in her ears. She darted through the maze of aisles, knocking over displays in her frantic escape. She burst out of the store and into the crowded mall, desperately searching for help. But every face she saw seemed oblivious to her plight. She ducked into a maintenance corridor, hoping to lose her pursuer. The sound of his footsteps grew louder, closer. Chelsea's breath came in ragged gasps as she found a door marked "Employees Only" and slipped inside. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to calm her racing heart. The footsteps stopped outside the door. She held her breath, praying he wouldn't find her. Minutes passed like hours. Just as she thought she was safe, the door creaked open. Chelsea's heart sank as the stalker entered, his eyes gleaming with triumph. She backed away, but there was nowhere to run. In a final act of desperation, Chelsea grabbed a metal rod from a nearby shelf and swung it at him. He dodged easily, laughing. His laugh was cold, devoid of any humanity. He reached out and grabbed her wrist, his grip like a vice. "No one's going to believe you," he whispered, his breath hot against her ear. "You're just another mannequin now." Chelsea's vision blurred as he forced her to the ground. She felt her body stiffen, her limbs growing heavy and unresponsive. Panic surged through her as she realized what was happening. She was turning into a mannequin, her skin hardening, her movements slowing until she could no longer move or scream. The last thing she saw was her own reflection in a mirror, her eyes wide with terror, now cold and lifeless. The stalker positioned her among the other mannequins, a grotesque trophy of his twisted obsession. And there she stood, forever trapped in a nightmare, her silent scream echoing in the empty halls of the mall. The shoppers passed by, oblivious to the horror hidden in plain sight, never suspecting that one of the mannequins was once a woman just like them, now a prisoner of the stalker's dark desires. Closing time. The mall was eerily quiet as the clock struck midnight, signaling closing time. A handful of employees lingered, finishing their tasks before heading home. The dim lighting cast long shadows across the empty corridors, and the only sounds were the faint hum of the air conditioning and the occasional clatter of cleaning equipment. Sarah, the shift supervisor, was doing her final rounds, ensuring everything was in order. She glanced at her checklist, noting that Billy, the security guard, was supposed to lock the main entrance. She headed toward the security office to confirm, her footsteps echoing through the deserted mall. As she approached the office, A sense of unease settled over her. The door was ajar, and the light inside flickered ominously. "Billy?" she called, but there was no response. Pushing the door open, she froze. The office was in disarray, papers scattered everywhere, and Billy's chair lay overturned. A trail of blood led out the back door and into the darkness beyond. Panic surged through Sarah as she backed away, her mind racing. She needed to find the others and get out. She sprinted to the food court, where Carla, the barista, was cleaning up. "Carla, we need to leave now," Sarah said, breathless and terrified. Carla looked up, confused. "What's wrong?" "Billy's gone, and there's blood everywhere. Something's not right." Carla's eyes widened in fear, and she quickly grabbed her phone. "I'll call the police." As she dialed, a loud crash echoed from the nearby toy store. Both women jumped, and Sarah instinctively grabbed Carla's hand. "Let's find the others. We can't stay here." They hurried through the darkened mall, their senses on high alert. They found Tom, the electronics store clerk, in the back room, oblivious to the danger. Sarah quickly explained the situation, and they decided to stick together. "We need to check the janitor's closet," Tom suggested. "Sam might still be around." The janitor, Sam, was an older man, always kind and helpful. It seemed unlikely he was involved, but they needed to ensure everyone was safe. As they approached the closet, the door was slightly open. Sarah hesitated before pushing it wide. Inside, they found Sam, mopping the floor, his face serene and calm. "Sam, something's wrong. Billy is missing, and there's blood in the security office," Sarah said, her voice trembling. Sam looked up, his expression unreadable. "Stay calm. I'll help you find him," he said, placing the mop against the wall. His voice was soothing, but something about his demeanor felt off. They moved cautiously through the mall, searching for any sign of Billy. The silence was oppressive, every creak and rustle amplifying their fear. Suddenly, Carla screamed. They turned to see her standing over a bloody rag, discarded in the middle of the hallway. "It's his," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "It's Billy's." Before they could react, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the mall into darkness. Panic gripped them as they huddled together, trying to make sense of the situation. Tom fumbled for his flashlight, and when he finally turned it on, they saw Sam standing eerily still, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "Stay close," Sarah urged, her heart pounding. "We need to get to the main entrance." They moved as a group, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. As they reached the entrance, they found the doors locked. Tom pulled at them frantically, but they wouldn't budge. "We're trapped," he muttered, fear evident in his voice. A chilling laugh echoed through the mall, and they turned to see Sam, his kind facade replaced with a menacing grin. "You should have listened to me," he said softly, pulling a blood-stained knife from his pocket. Sarah's blood ran cold as realization dawned. Sam was the killer. They backed away slowly, but Sam advanced, his eyes gleaming with sadistic delight. Tom lunged at him, trying to disarm him, but Sam was quicker, slashing the knife across Tom's chest. Tom fell to the ground, gasping for breath as blood pooled around him. "Run!" Sarah screamed, grabbing Carla's hand. They sprinted down the corridor, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. Behind them, Sam's footsteps echoed ominously. They ducked into a clothing store, hiding among the racks of clothes. Sarah pressed a hand to Carla's mouth, trying to stifle her sobs. They listened as Sam's footsteps grew closer, then stopped. The silence was deafening. After what felt like an eternity, they heard the faint sound of an elevator ding. Sarah peeked out and saw Sam entering the elevator, thinking they had gone up. This was their chance. "We need to trap him," Sarah whispered, formulating a plan. "We'll wait until he's in the elevator, then hit the emergency stop." Carla nodded, determination replacing her fear. They waited until Sam was inside. Then Sarah sprinted to the control panel and hit the stop button. The elevator jerked to a halt, and Sam's furious screams filled the mall. Sarah quickly called the police, explaining their dire situation. "Please hurry," she begged, her voice shaking. Minutes felt like hours as they waited, but finally, the sound of sirens pierced the night. The police arrived, freeing the terrified women and apprehending Sam. He was led away in handcuffs, still screaming his threats. As the adrenaline wore off, Sarah collapsed into a sobbing heap, the trauma of the night washing over her. Carla hugged her tightly, grateful they had survived. Months later, the mall had returned to normal, but Sarah was forever changed. She couldn't walk through its halls without feeling the cold grip of fear. The memory of that night haunted her, a reminder of the horrors that lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. But she was a survivor, and though the scars would never fully heal, she found strength in knowing she had faced the darkness and emerged, battered but alive. The vents. The Sunset Ridge Mall was bustling as usual, its corridors filled with shoppers and the lively hum of commerce. Yet, behind the cheerful facade, a dark rumor spread among the employees. Strange noises echoed through the air vents, and shadowy figures were seen moving within the maintenance areas. Most dismissed it as paranoia or tricks of the light, but the whispers grew louder when Tim, the night security guard, went missing. Sarah, a maintenance worker with a knack for solving problems, had heard the stories but paid little mind to them. However, Tim's disappearance gnawed at her curiosity. She decided to investigate the strange occurrences, convinced that there was a logical explanation. One evening, after the mall had closed and the last of the shoppers had gone home, Sarah equipped herself with a flashlight, a walkie-talkie, and a toolkit. She began her exploration in the maintenance areas, following the air ducts that snaked through the bowels of the building. As she crawled into one of the larger vents, the cold metal pressing against her palms and knees, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The air was thick with dust, and her flashlight cast eerie shadows on the vent walls. Every now and then, she heard faint rustling sounds, as if something was moving just out of sight. Sarah paused, her breath hitching as a low, guttural growl reverberated through the vent. She swung her flashlight around, but saw nothing. Determined to find the source, she pressed on, her nerves fraying with each passing moment. Deeper into the vents, she found odd markings on the metal, deep scratches that looked too deliberate to be the work of rodents. Her heart pounded as she realized they were claw marks. She tried to radio for backup, but the walkie-talkie only emitted static. She was on her own. As she crawled further, the vent opened into a small maintenance room. It was dimly lit with tools and equipment scattered about. In the corner, she spotted a large, gaping hole in the wall leading to another section of the vents. The edges of the hole were jagged, as if torn open by something incredibly strong. Her flashlight beam swept over the room, landing on a pile of discarded clothes. Among them was Tim's uniform, blood-stained and torn. Sarah's stomach churned with fear and revulsion. She had to get out and alert the authorities. Just as she turned to leave, she heard a scraping sound from the hole in the wall. Slowly, she pointed her flashlight into the darkness. Two glowing eyes stared back at her, unblinking and menacing. The creature emerged, its form monstrous and otherworldly. It had elongated limbs, sharp claws, and a grotesque, almost humanoid face twisted into a snarl. Sarah's scream caught in her throat as the creature lunged at her. She ducked just in time, scrambling back into the vents. The creature followed, its movements swift and predatory. Sarah's mind raced as she navigated the twisting passages, trying to lose the beast. Her flashlight flickered, casting erratic beams of light. She glanced back and saw the creature gaining on her. With a burst of adrenaline, she sped up, her hands and knees bruised and bloody from the rough metal. She spotted an access hatch ahead and pushed it open, tumbling out into a storage room. She slammed the hatch shut just as the creature reached it, its claws scratching furiously at the metal. Sarah braced herself against the door, panting and trembling. Minutes passed in silence. The scratching stopped, but Sarah knew the creature was still out there, lurking. She needed to escape the mall, but as she moved to leave the storage room, a sharp pain shot through her arm. She looked down and saw a small, deep cut oozing blackish blood. Fear turned to horror as she realized the cut wasn't from the vents. It was a bite mark. She remembered the creature's attack and the moment it had grazed her arm. Panic surged as she stumbled toward the exit, her vision blurring. She managed to reach the mall's main corridor, her body weakening with each step. The air felt colder, the lights dimmer. She collapsed near the entrance, her skin prickling with an unnatural sensation. She tried to call for help, but her voice was barely a whisper. As she lay there, she felt her body changing. Her limbs elongated, her nails grew into claws, and her vision sharpened in the darkness. The realization hit her with crushing despair. She was becoming one of them. The transformation was slow and agonizing. Her humanity slipped away, replaced by primal instincts. The last coherent thought she had was of her colleagues, who would undoubtedly come looking for her. She wanted to warn them, but it was too late. She was now the monster in the vents, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to wander too close. The next morning, the mall opened as usual, the staff unaware of the horrors lurking above them. The rumors persisted, and more employees would disappear in the weeks to come. The creature in the vents, once a curious and brave woman named Sarah, now prowled the dark passages, a silent predator born of curiosity and misfortune. The Cursed Mirror. The Pinewood Plaza had seen its share of stores come and go, but none intrigued the shoppers as much as the new antique store, Timeless Treasures. Its quaint, dimly lit interior was filled with relics from the past, each with its own story, but none captivated attention like the beautiful old mirror that hung in the center of the store. The mirror was exquisite, framed in ornate, gilded scrollwork, its surface flawless and inviting. However, it carried a dark history that few knew about. According to legend, it was cursed, and those who gazed into it would see more than their own reflection. Clara, a new employee at Timeless Treasures, was fascinated by the mirror. She often caught herself staring into it during her shifts, admiring the craftsmanship. But she noticed something odd. Shoppers who looked into the mirror began behaving strangely, as if possessed. They would leave the store with vacant expressions, only to be found later, dazed and confused, in various parts of the mall. One day, an elderly woman entered the store, her eyes immediately drawn to the mirror. Clara watched as the woman's demeanor changed after looking into it. Her face twisted into a mask of terror before she turned and walked out in a trance-like state. Concerned, Clara decided to follow her. She found the woman in a dark corner of the mall, muttering to herself and scratching at her arms. Clara approached cautiously, trying to help, but the woman lashed out, screaming about visions of a dark figure in the mirror. Clara's worry grew. This was not the first time she had seen someone react this way. Determined to uncover the truth, Clara began researching the mirror's history. She scoured old books and online archives, learning that the mirror once belonged to a notorious occultist who had used it in rituals. It was said that the mirror trapped the souls of those who gazed into it too long, driving them mad. Clara's unease turned to fear as she realized the full extent of the mirror's curse. She knew she had to do something before more people fell victim. Returning to the store, she avoided the mirror's gaze and continued her research in the back room, finally finding a possible solution. To break the curse, one had to sacrifice their own reflection. The thought sent chills down her spine, but she couldn't ignore the responsibility she felt. That night, after the mall had closed and the store was empty, Clara stood before the mirror. Taking a deep breath, she lit candles and performed the ritual described in her research. As she spoke the incantation, the room grew cold, and the air thickened with a sinister presence. Her reflection began to change, warping and distorting until it no longer resembled her. It snarled and clawed at the glass, a grotesque mockery of her own image. Clara's heart pounded, but she continued, reciting the final words. With a final, echoing scream, her reflection shattered. Clara stumbled back, feeling an unbearable pain as if part of her soul had been torn away. When she looked into the mirror again, she saw a distorted, haunted visage staring back. Her once gentle features were now twisted and scarred, a permanent reminder of the sacrifice she had made. The mirror's curse was broken. The victims began to recover, their minds clearing as the dark influence faded. Clara watched as the elderly woman and others returned to their normal selves, grateful but unaware of the price Clara had paid. News of the strange occurrences and the miraculous recovery spread quickly, but the true story remained hidden. Clara continued to work at Timeless Treasures, her new face a constant reminder of the darkness she had confronted. People whispered about the disfigured woman who worked at the antique store, never knowing the depth of her bravery. Despite her appearance, Clara found solace in knowing she had saved others from a fate worse than death. She became a silent guardian of the mall, ensuring that no other cursed items found their way into the lives of the unsuspecting. In the quiet moments, when she was alone with her thoughts, she would catch glimpses of her old self in the shadows of the mirror. The reflection was a ghostly echo of the woman she used to be, but it was a small price to pay for the lives she had saved. And so, Clara lived on, her scarred face a testament to the courage it took to confront the darkness within the cursed mirror.